I'm a master herbalist, and I have studied healthy lifestyles for over 20 years. I've traveled the country, been to many, like California, Colorado. That was where I started researching this kind of thing. Florida is lacking a lot, but I guess that's why I'm still here, because it needs a lot of education. And this presentation came about from a Boy Scout merit badge, a sustainability merit badge they just started adding last year, and I'm a merit badge counselor for it. And so as I was compiling information for the Boy Scouts, it led me to say, what would that look like if you put it all in one place in a PowerPoint? And then combined with my background research, I've written this book here recently, Closer to the Sun, a recipe book for health for the next evolutionary phase of mankind, which you'll see why when you see this PowerPoint. So, I have a background that goes with this. So let's get started. I'm going to move kind of quickly, like I said, to stay on task. There's a lot of information in here. It's really important and really pertinent. Things have really sped up with what's going on the planet, and that's what this presentation is about. So it's titled Sustainability, Is the Earth Dying? And I'm going to present to you, and you decide after my presentation. So the Earth, I'm not going to read every single slide, but the Earth is 4.6 billion years old. If we scaled that down to just 46 years, that means we've been here for just 4 hours. And in that time, our Industrial Revolution began just 1 minute ago. We have managed to destroy more than 50% of the world's forests in just 1 minute of humans being on the planet. Basically, this is where I started making a list of all the things that had these high percentages, 97%, 98%, 99%. I was like, if all these places have these high percentages of the fish being gone, the salmon being gone, the famous Chesapeake Bay oysters, 99% gone, I was like, what is actually left? And this is where I started to say to my son, what do you think of all this? And he goes, the Earth is dying. And that was what he said. So that's why it's called Is the Earth Dying? And that's why I'm saying to you, does this look like the Earth is dying to you? If 97, 98, 99%. And there's more. This list could be longer. So how is it that the Native Americans managed to live on this continent for over 10,000 years without ever increasing their population or decreasing any others? Not one ecosystem was ever disrupted or destroyed by them in over 10,000 years. When civilized man first came to the Americas, our first order of business was to make room for our manifest destiny. So using biological warfare, the Native Americans were purposely infected with the smallpox virus. And this was something they learned from other centuries earlier, using the same thing on the Aztecs. And it killed 95% of their population, more than swords, guns, or armies combined. This was no random infectious spread. In 1763, the British Army attempted to infect the Native Americans with smallpox using blankets that had been exposed to the virus. Not only did it devastate the population, but the Indians were dying and being overrun with wolves, feasting on their corpses, and any even survivors as they were still alive. William Walker says they were just lying dead about the ground like rotten sheep, and the wild beasts devouring them. And this is how the Native Americans were destroyed, 95% smallpox. And as I mentioned before, the Aztecs as well. They said the Indians didn't know how to remedy the disease. They were dying in heaps like bed bugs. And when Cortez returned, everybody was so weakened from the disease, he easily defeated the Aztecs. Biological warfare is not a new concept. Unlike HIV, however, Ebola can survive outside the host. And a virus is not considered a living organism because it can't produce without a host cell. It's just a piece of genetic material surrounded by a protein. Like HIV, Ebola also can be spread through sperm. And that's important to know because that affects reproduction. And both of these originated in lab monkeys from Africa, which coincidentally happens to be the fastest growing population anywhere else in the world in Africa.
The monkeys or the people?
The people in Africa, this is a chart of the total fertility of females and how many children are born to them. The higher, darker colors, the reds, the orange, the yellow, represents 8 to 9 children apiece, or 6 and above, or 5 and above, and the beige colored. So as you can see, compared to the rest of the world, Africa is where the most growth rate is occurring. And that's where both of these viruses were originated in lab monkeys.
So it's like a sexually transmitted disease also.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. But it's better than HIV because it can survive outside the host. So where did civilized man come from? When the Europeans first came to America, it wasn't all about religious freedom like we're always told. They had actually run out of forest to supply them with wood over in Europe and clean water. That's why they were always drinking wine, because they needed that to sterilize the water from bacteria. They couldn't drink the water, basically. It was so polluted. They needed more resources. And in just a little over 200 years, that civilized man, because you'll notice on the planet, all our histories always are talked from the discovery from civilized man's point of view, where the indigenous people were always there. And it's civilized man that, for whatever reason, is where we hear, when we discovered this or that. When we arrived in America that used to be so many trees, squirrels could literally jump from tree to tree and cross the whole continent that way. And now you can look out your window, all we have are token trees, in lots and people's yards. And yet consumers cannot seem to stop consuming. This is what our world population is looking like now. Even just in Melbourne, as far as I'm concerned. I was driving there the other day, it was so much traffic. I was like, this is encroaching on us in Sebastian. It's almost here, and it's just south of Vero Beach. It's really only between Sebastian and Vero Beach that it's not. By 1900, the New York City population was doubling every decade. Actually, in 1804, Pennsylvania was already saying they were overcrowded in 1804. There were over 200,000 horses, each producing 25 pounds of manure each day in New York, and they didn't know what to do with all this waste. Their stores were clogging up, they couldn't get rid of the garbage or the dead animal carcasses, and they had nowhere to dump anything except into the water. Same thing was happening in Chicago. In 1850, they came up with the solution of raising the city 10 feet, literally, with jacks and screws. Each building, even while people were still in the hotels, they moved things around and elevated the city 10 feet so that it would all drain off into the lake. This was in 1850. 200 years ago. The problem has only gotten worse. So in New York, in an average square mile, there's about 69,000 people. Compared to where we are in places like Vero Beach, in an average square mile, there's only about 1,100 people. So you can see, the difference of what's happening. And it's not just there. In India, there's about 777,000 people per square mile. In Hong Kong, 357,000 people per square mile. 357,000 people. Here's another. That was the slums of India. This one is the marine lines. 295,000 people per square mile. But you can just see how this has happened, that we've destroyed all the trees to make room for people. And on this little island in Colombia, Santa Cruz, 206, look what they've done to this island. I mean, where else can they put anything? Same thing, Bangladesh, 263,000 people per square mile. And look at Brazil. It's not hard to see that we've taken all the trees, right? 207,000. Kenya, and this is the whole world. When we live here in this beautiful place with hardly any traffic, we don't think anything's a problem. The Philippines, Hong Kong, the whole island. So the concentrated energy of using fossil fuels is what really changed the way humans lived on the planet. Prior to that, there just wasn't that kind of energy to do this massive, large-scale global damage. It just wasn't there. But for the last 250 years, it has been. And this guy, Robert Jensen, he's saying, and to me, that's the game changer, that we have to recognize that, in fact, things do change, and that the last 250 years have been a kind of experiment in destruction that we either wake up from or we don't. And he wrote a book called Arguing for Our Lives. Human activity is pushing the planet beyond the limits it is capable of. It is simply not sustainable. And the definition of sustainability is capable of being continued with minimal long-term effect on the environment, able to be used without being completely used up or destroyed, able to last or continue for a long time. And we are now past the tipping point. All the times they were talking about we're approaching the tipping point, we are past the tipping point now. And it has been said that even if we were to stop everything we're doing immediately today, it would still take decades to stop the momentum of the damage we've done, even if we just stopped everything today. So this is a logo that is going around t-shirts, bags, and things like that. I'm saying, has it really come down to what this logo suggests? It has been estimated that to meet the demands of our current rate of consumption, we would need the resources of 5 Earths. But the problem is we only have the one. Warning signal after warning signal goes unheeded time after time. Life as we know it is almost over. A large-scale human presence on the planet at this level of consumption is impossible. Does anybody disagree with that?
No.
We can't predict when this party will end, but make no mistake, the party's over, folks. We are in the process of the long emergency now. We have entered that zone. That's Robert Jensen again. Bill McKibben says, the world hasn't ended, but the world as we know it has, even if we don't quite know it yet. So there is a trash vortex in the Pacific Ocean that is 5 million square miles large. 5 million square miles big, estimated to equal about the size of 2 United States, made up of plastic water bottles and plastic grocery bags and other plastics that take a long time to break down. So there's still so many people using constant cases of plastic water bottles. They each take 450 years to decompose. With that many people on the planet, this is the result of that. So this is the area they're saying is one of the largest ones in the Pacific. What's happening is the animals are eating all this plastic thinking that it's food. And there's more than just that one though. There's 5 of them, which take up most of the ocean space really. This is just swirling masses of garbage, just, like in an eddy. And this is what it looks like close up.
Oh
Makes you
my
want to
gosh.
cry. It really just makes me want to
That's
cry.
horrible.
And there's more close up, just sitting on the surface. This must be in the Philippines, I think. I couldn't find exactly where this was, but there's a couple of river shots. I've narrowed it down to just one, just full of plastic garbage. And this is the ocean here. They have come up to the edge of it. If this is not land, this is water. And that's what it looks like when you come up to it.
Wow.
Some of the animals, when they're young, crawl into these little plastic things and they grow up in that thing. Like that's like a milk jug plastic thing.
Oh
And,
my god.
and we're not seeing the wildlife that are suffering as well. And turtles, anytime we release balloons, like for all those festive occasions, those come down and the turtles think they're jellyfish. And they're the worst things you can release. So there's also something called a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, equal to the size of New Jersey currently, which is made from all the chemical fertilizers from the factory farmed animals that wash off into the Mississippi River and then head down into the Gulf of Mexico. It was the biggest it's ever been last year, which means it's still growing. And they're saying that much of the Gulf of Mexico is on its way to becoming an aquatic desert, meaning nothing can live in it. So factory farming is a big problem. And this is what basically they're just dumping the sewage. I mean, the animals, you saw that there was a problem in 1900 with 200,000 horses. They couldn't get rid of that sewage. Imagine today with how many animals we're packing into those feedlots. These are fish that have swam into the Gulf in that section where there was no oxygen, and they immediately die. Dead zones are also on the rise. It's not just in the Gulf of Mexico. Nearly 85% of the oxygen for the whole planet comes from oceans. But instead of producing oxygen, there's over 405 dead zones totaling over 95,000 square miles that cannot support marine life. And when you combine these with the trash vortexes, picture those in the middle, it's not hard to see where our oceans are headed. For the wildlife, picture all them. That's why they're saying 97% of the fish are gone, in addition to that we're overfishing. This chart here is what I want you to see. In 1910, it was just a little glitch there. It's dramatically, this is only 2007. This is 8 years, what is it? What year is this?
14.
6,
7 years ago.
7 years ago. Imagine now, it's way up here. All the charts I noticed in doing these things, all the charts look like this. They all have this nothing, then all of a sudden just straight up skyrocket. Pesticides from commercial farming are also affecting other ecosystems. Some of them, like the bees that have been around for over 200 million years, are now estimated to be 50 to 90% gone in just really the last 30 years, after 200 million years. They are responsible for all the food, 15 to 30% of the food we eat. Bees from one hive can visit 1 million flowers within a 400 square kilometer in just one day, and from just one hive. Einstein predicted that if bees were to disappear, man would follow only a few years later. So this is something 200 million years ago. And it doesn't matter how good the farmer is, or what kind of soil he has, or what kind of seeds, or what kind of fertilizer, or anything, if there's no bees to pollinate the plants. What will end up happening is we will have to do that by hand with a paintbrush, which they already are doing on some plants. They'll have to hire workers to take with a paintbrush from one flower to the next. That's where we're heading. Bats are another one that have been around for 52 million years, also now facing extinction. They eat up to 2,000 insects a night, 600 mosquitoes in an hour, and that's a natural pest control for farmers. So without that natural pest control, that requires more pesticides to replace what they were doing. Frogs and amphibians have also been around for 300 million years and successfully survived the last 3 mass extinctions, and they are now facing extinction. They are also a natural pest control. They eat up to 15,000 pest insects each year, and none of the good ones, just the bad ones. So there's a problem with the water supply, with estrogen, birth control, and other chemicals related to estrogen in the water that's changing all the male frogs into female frogs. And so then the females are all going around pregnant. They can't dump their eggs on any sperm from a male frog, so they're carrying their eggs way too long. They're actually trying to harvest the male frogs, any that they can find. They go around and look for one at a time, bring them into a protected lab and try to keep them alive. And the same thing, when they leave, that's going to also increase demand for chemical pesticides. So in summary, 98% of all species that have ever lived are now extinct, and every 24 hours it is estimated we lose somewhere between 30 and 150 species more, which is about 1 every half hour. They are all leaving the planet. So what does that mean for us? Humans themselves are becoming sterile. When they did a study with hamsters given GMO food, which is the genetically modified food, after just 3 generations, the hamsters were sterile. And in humans, it takes about 5 generations, they're saying. But we're already well into the 2nd and almost 3rd generation of this GMO food. So they're definitely seeing a decline in sperm vitality. If you ever see those charts, they just go straight downhill. Natural News reports that the ones who will survive will be the ones with the strongest gene pool, survival of the fittest, the ones who are not eating contaminated GMO foods. He calls this the great genocalypse of the human race. And there was a guy, Bertrand Russell, in 1930 who predicted this. He said all but 5% of males and 30% of females will be sterilized. And if you don't know, in the corn gene itself is a sterilization gene, genetically manipulated into the corn gene itself is a gene that kills sperm. That also kills it in females. When the female gets sperm inside her, it works the same way and stops that sperm from being productive. And most food has corn in it, 75%. And corn is what is fed to all the animals. If you think you're not eating corn, if you're eating animals, you're eating corn. If you're eating fish, the fish are fed the GMO corn. If you're drinking beverages, the beverages like beer, soda, all have GMO, high fructose corn syrup. Anything that has high fructose corn syrup, all the breads have it. It's in almost everything. We are literally in the 6th great mass extinction, and it is happening at a rate 1,000 times faster than any other extinction in history, caused 100% by the way humans are living on the planet and the choices we are making in how we feed ourselves. That is our biggest problem, how we are feeding ourselves. We are no longer called Homo sapiens. We have a new name, which is Homo destructivus, which stands for the destructive humans of the world's history. And this is in Gainesville at the Museum of Florida History. A quote from one of the Holocaust survivors is that a survivor fears he or she may be the last to remember, the last to warn, the last to tell the tale that cannot be told, the tale that must be told. And this, Susan says, I want to teach people that we can't be onlookers. If we see injustice taking place, we have to do something about it. And they're all speaking out, but they're all about to die. They are the last, they're in their 80s and their 90s, and they're afraid they're going to be the last ones who can tell what happened to them. For the first time in 2008, 65% of all our food was imported, more than what we grew ourselves. It is predicted by next year, 46% of all U.S. fresh vegetables will come from China. People would rather pay the cheaper cost for products of lesser quality. The typical American does not care what he eats as long as it is cheap. But what happens when we can no longer use fossil fuel to transport that food that we're depending on now from China? And by the way, China now is one of the largest producers of taking chickens we're growing over here and what were they called, processing them. They're processed in China, 7,000 miles there, 7,000 miles back, because it's so cheap to do it in China. But China is not known for high standards whatsoever. They're known for the bottom of the barrel. And that's, we're moving food 14,000 miles to have the cheaper version of chickens. They say almost all of them, 100% have cancer. They're just cutting out the tumors if you're not getting organic chicken. Family farms have been disappearing at the rate of 1 farm per hour. We lost 8,900 farms between 2005 and 2006, which equals 2 acres of farmland every minute. About 15,000 years ago, that's when the first farmers started saving seeds from one crop and using them again the next year, and they did this whole time until recently Monsanto had a vision for agriculture for the planet's problems of producing food. Whoever controls the seed bank of the world, which there is a seed bank under the ice caps of Antarctica, controls the world's food supply. Monsanto has gotten the rights to the majority of patents that are on all of these seeds. It is their choice what seeds they release to be sold or to be used to the public every year. And besides that, they're making plants sterile on purpose, so that you have to buy your seeds from them. Almost 96% of all the commercial vegetables that we had in 1903 are not just not available, they're extinct. It is not just the animals going extinct. And again, this is where I ask you, doesn't that look to you like the planet is dying? We are in our last 4%. Terminator genes are actually spliced into genes at the genetic level to stop the plant from being able to reproduce on its own. They're also doing this with trees. There's a movie called Silent Forest. You can see this happening with the trees that won't produce nuts, seeds, pollen, fruit, flowers, and no wildlife can then feed off those trees. That's why they're calling it the silent forest. There will be no offspring and no insects, and this is to help the paper industry because of all the paper we use. They're predicting in 20 to 30 years we will have completely decimated the forest. And Monsanto, again, owns any of these trees that possibly would contaminate other trees, and it spreads a lot of times with plants through wind pollination. So without trees, the rain disappears, the earth becomes desert, which is what's happening, and the oxygen supply becomes depleted. Evidence of how much oxygen we used to have is the size of how large dragonflies used to have a 6-foot wingspan in the time of the dinosaurs. Armadillos were as big as Volkswagens, literally, and millipedes were 6-8 feet long. So you can see how much they've shrunk, and that's directly related to the oxygen on the planet. Trees are the lungs of the planet. If we don't have the oxygen they produce, maybe that's why we're all drinking so much coffee. Today's food supply has been weakened at best, contaminated at worst, and is often the very cause of the cancer we seek to avoid. It has been genetically manipulated. But it is mostly in our food in America that this is happening. The whole rest of the world is watching America to see how many years it's going to take us to develop the problems that they're seeing with the hamsters and the tumors and everything else. The other countries actually don't even allow GMO foods in them. In our country, it's illegal, it's a law not to tell people that they're genetically manipulated. The only way you'll know your food is not genetically manipulated is if it says non-GMO on it. And basically that means if you're buying organic. They know that if people knew they were genetically manipulated, they took a survey and they said they wouldn't buy them. So for us, nobody is being told how much, and it's about 85% of our food in the grocery stores. Children are suffering as much as adults these days with the same adult diseases that used to take decades to acquire, but not anymore. Now the children are getting these diseases themselves as children, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, etc. They're saying today's children are the first generation of Americans projected to have a shorter lifespan than their parents, with 1 out of 3 at risk for developing type 2 diabetes, which used to only be seen once you got older. By 2030, they're expecting 65 million more adults to have obesity. In other words, as much as you see these ads for these, things happening in the stores, organic food is being offered in the stores. There is a lot of good news that we're seeing, but yet they're still expecting this to severely, dramatically worsen. In fact, in this new film that just came out this year called Fed Up, Katie Couric says in that film over 95% of all Americans will be overweight or obese in less than 20 years. 95%. There was a movie that came out several years ago called WALL-E. Did anyone see this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so in that movie, the planet has been destroyed. We have so much garbage, there's nowhere to put it, so they just have robots living on planet Earth, squishing the garbage into little squares and trying to pile it up. There's no green living things. Part of their mission is to find a plant as they're cleaning the garbage. All the humans have gone to another planet. That's where this scene is from. And on that other planet, they're all obese. They're all just in these motorized chairs with their computers in their face, their cell phones on their ear, and everything's a drive-through, and they never have to get out or walk around or exercise. In the movie, when they fall out of the chair, they can't get back up. People have to help pick them up. It was a shocking movie, and that's what we're heading towards. We're just like that movie.
It was a kid's movie with that hidden message in it.
Yeah, and the message is at the
Totally.
very end.
Oh, yeah.
Diabetes is also expected to increase, even if obesity stayed the same. Why would that be? They're saying just 1 can of soda increases your chance of diabetes by 20%. That same movie is saying by 2050, 1 out of every 3 Americans will have diabetes. Alzheimer's is also expected to increase by 81%. Why? Why is everything getting worse? Today, they're saying 35 million people have it. By 2050, it's just up, up, up. Cancer is also expected to triple in the next 15 years alone, meaning 80% of the people will have cancer in just the next 15 years. By the year 2020, and as early as possibly next year, they're saying pancreatic cancer will move into the fourth leading cause of death, from the fourth leading cause of death into the second leading cause of death. More than doubling by 2030. And the pancreas is the hardest of all cancers to recover from. Once your pancreas goes, it's a quick death. So with HIV, they're saying it started in Africa when hunters killed and ate infected chimpanzees. And I'm saying, if you believe this is how HIV started, then what does that say about the sexual nature of the hunters? How did it then jump immediately into the gay community, and specifically only the gay community? Are all hunters gay? So this is still increasing. You don't hear about it, but 14,000 people every day are still getting HIV. 1 in 6 of those living with it don't know they have it. And the most, 1 in 4 are actually youth aged 13 to 24 is one of the fastest growing segments of new infections. In the United States, you can see down here that a large majority is actually heterosexual transmission now versus Europe. 53% was male to male, or is male to male, but there's 31% is male to female, and so it's not just a gender specific disease anymore. This is old, this is 2002, but I just wanted to show you again how Africa is targeted for HIV. Mercury is highly poisonous. Asia is burning the majority of the coal and producing the majority of mercury emissions worldwide. The Pacific Ocean, they're saying, will be twice as contaminated with mercury in 2050 as it was 20 years ago, if the emission rates continue. What that means, why that's a problem, is wild-caught fish are loaded with mercury and radiation, loaded. Farm-raised fish are no better because they actually grind up concentrated pellets of wild-caught fish to feed them along with the GMO corn, so you're actually eating more unless you're raising the fish yourself. And Hippocrates Health Institute in West Palm Beach, they've got one issue that is phenomenal just on fish, that there's so much more you could learn about the fish. Here's the radiation that has spread from Japan throughout the ocean. And these are the different seafoods and how much mercury is in them. Swordfish is the highest, then shark, tuna. There's different kinds of tuna, albacore, white canned white.
Sorry, can you go back?
Oh, you want to see that? Yeah.
What's the least?
I noticed catfish was on
Scallops,
there.
the
Yeah,
highest
scallops.
in your restaurant. And shrimp. Even salmon is less in the fish.
So swordfish and tuna, the worst ones. 40% of people's exposure to methylmercury in the United States comes from tuna. And this is circulated over vast distances from the ocean, not the air.
Tuna salad.
I don't eat.
At the gas station.
Ask her. It's me.
At the gas.
But really, you have to
They're
like,
eating and you say, oh, this is delicious. I love
And
it.
ask her what I told her after that. I feel so sick. I'm never going to order that salad. Ask her.
Right when she was eating, I said, don't you feel sick with all that thing?
And that's I order for like once in
She
a
said,
blue
oh, I love
moon.
it.
I love it. I like it. And then I told you I'm never ordering. I told him when I order, please tell me not to order that salad.
so there's these two doctors, Mark Spurry and Emmons, and they did experiments showing that there are higher concentrations of mercury in the autopsy brains of Alzheimer's patients than people who didn't have Alzheimer's when they autopsied their brains. 100% of people tested with hair follicle testing showed everybody has significant levels of mercury. It's not just coming from the fish, it's not just coming from the ocean. The primary cause of Alzheimer's, they're saying, is actually from dental films. which for years, the dentists refused to budge on saying they were harmful, even though they came over in radioactive waste containers and they had to be disposed of with their hazmat suits. But yet they put them in our mouth. It does pass the blood-brain barrier, and it's constantly, every time you chew, you reactivate it.
Good thing mine fell out.
So how much mercury is actually in a flu shot? They're also in our vaccines, mercury. And this here is showing that, like the tuna thing is 250 parts per billion. Look at how much is in a flu shot. 500, twice as much, 51,000.
How much is in the teeth then?
Oh, that was whitefish. This is the flu shot, 51,000.
Yeah, but now they have mercury-free flu shots.
So there's billboards like this, you know, Moms Against Mercury. It's in the flu shots and the vaccines. Why? Why is it in there? Another topic, factory farming has got to go. We are at the point where it is the worst problem we're facing on this planet. Either raise it yourself, get into a co-op where you can split a cow with somebody else if you insist on eating it, or just stop eating meat. It's that simple. Enough is enough. This is our worst problem by far. It is the biggest contributor to the most serious environmental problems, causing more greenhouse gas emissions than all the cars, trucks, planes, and ships in the world combined. And at the United Nations Summit last week, or 2 weeks ago, I think it was last week, all the time they're talking about greenhouse gas emissions. They never, ever, ever talk about factory farming. Nobody ever mentions it because the meat industry is so powerful. They tell you to ride your bike, change your light bulb, recycle, and then nobody talks about how bad eating meat is for the planet. This is a chart down here that's showing the difference between veganism, vegetarianism, and a meat diet, whether it's organic, which is the light green, or dark green is conventional, and how much kilometers represented in car kilometers of greenhouse gas each kind is creating. So veganism clearly is the least amount of damage. Vegetarianism is actually, it's better than meat, but it's not even, that great, really. Veganism is where we need to go. This problem is urgent. And even if you say, oh, I'm eating organic meat, see, it's still just almost as severe with greenhouse gas. Factory farming has all kinds of problems with methane, soil erosion, pollution, dead zones, deforestation, and 80% of all the antibiotics used in the U.S. are actually used on the factory farms. In the 1990s, they were estimating since then we've lost approximately 80 to 90% of the Amazonian rainforests and other forests due to clearing lands just so the cattle can eat. It takes 5,000 gallons of water to raise 1 pound of beef versus 5 gallons of water to raise 1 pound of plant-based protein. 5,000 gallons for 1 pound of meat that you buy in the store. When you buy that pound of meat, just keep that in mind. That took 5,000 gallons to raise that. Versus if you got a pound of any kind of plant protein, it only took 5 gallons. And our water is a problem. They're saying that's the next oil shortage, is the water shortage. The single factor most responsible for all these aspects of unsustainability is our choice of food. Specifically the consumption of animals and animal products and the inefficient use of resources to produce them. Tipping points have already been reached, and windows of averting irreversible damage are beginning to close. Therefore, the time to change to a fully plant-based diet is now, today, not down the road when it is too late. It is already pretty much too late. They have this thing, Meatless Mondays, and they're saying that initiatives like that encourage us to take baby steps by giving up meat for 1 day are just delusional for people that it's actually going to make any difference. Just skipping meat for 1 day is not good enough. We're at the point it just has to stop, all of it. There is no debate that the most health-promoting and environmentally conscious way to live is through the consumption of a well-balanced vegan diet. Anyone who would deny this needs deep self-evaluation so they can ask themselves the hard question of why they feel the need to destroy and control life for their own misguided pleasure. This is Brian Clement from the Hippocrates Health Institute. He says, we petition you to become part of the human race and abandon the so-called norms that have created the catastrophic lifestyle that has all the earmarks to end life as we know it. Instead of destroying our planet and ourselves, we can be remembered as the generation that saved planet Earth by taking a broader view every time you make a choice on your food. Don't just think about what you want, think about how it's affecting the planet. If you feel unable or unwilling to make this change for your own health, then would you consider doing it for those around you? Family, friends, other living beings with whom we share the planet, future generations? And this is Dr. Richard Oppenlander, who wrote a book called Comfortably Unaware. And that's what we are. We are comfortably unaware. Right now we can get anything we want at any time. And we have no clue of what is really going on behind the scenes. This movie came out this year, I believe, called Cowspiracy. And that's what I'm talking about with why don't they ever talk about factory farming. This movie will tell you all the reasons why they're not talking about it. This guy here, he's a former cattle rancher. He says, do you realize that 75% of Americans consider themselves to be environmentalists? You don't think we could solve this problem in a heartbeat? All we would need is for the environmentalists to live what they profess, and we'd be on a new course in the world. This is not available on Netflix, and neither is Fed Up, but I believe they are on YouTube. I believe you can watch the whole thing. In addition to that, factory farming causes $34.7 million of environmental damage in dollars each year. U.S. livestock, we talked about producing the waste before, now it's producing 900 million tons of waste every year, which is 3 tons of manure per American, or 7 million pounds of waste every minute. Where is that all going to go? Every minute, 7 million pounds of waste. A 1,000-pound beef cow can produce 14 tons of manure every year. Iowa, the hogs produce 50 million tons of waste, which is 16 tons of manure for each of their 3 million residents in the state. 16 tons. America is 1/20th of the world's population, but we are eating 1/6 of the world's meat. The other countries with the highest meat consumptions are in red: Australia, South America, Canada. So what if your meat had labels like this? This says, I've been forced to live outside for a year now. The conditions have caused a cancer in my eye. There is now a crater on the side of my head. I am the 95%. And this pink slime was all in the news a few years ago. People think eating meat just kills animals, but the truth is it's also killing you. This pink slime, these are actual pictures. And it's made up of the animal entrails, organs, fat, muscle, used with poisonous ammonia is how they make it, which is never put on the label. There's a video on YouTube you can watch down there. The fact is, meat eaters have more health problems than people who don't eat meat. That is a fact. And they're saying it can even feminize men because of the estrogen that's in the meat. An estimated 70% of processed red meat is chock full of pink slime. Last year, all these fast food chains were in the news for using all of this, so they actually committed to not using it anymore. But instead, the USDA decided that they were going to buy 7 million pounds of this for school lunches. And school lunches are the least, the worst food, worse than jail cells, worse than military food is school lunches in quality. Here's another one. My legs are badly broken from trying to support my genetically modified upper body. I am the 95%. So here's a normal chicken. Usually it takes 5 weeks to get to 940 grams. But when they're genetically modified, they're pushing them to just explode in this heavy weight in the same amount of time, 5 weeks. And so the chicken can't even walk. His legs are broken. His weight is too much. they have these genetically modified chickens that are coming out with more than one leg, more than one wing, no feathers. I mean, they're just screwing with the food. It is tampered with frankenfood.
Oh my god.
So what is the 95%? That means 95% of your factory-raised animals are subject to deplorable conditions such as overcrowding, hunger, thirst, mutations, and oftentimes fatal weather. The majority of them. Here's another one, and they're saying, if the meat came with this, would you buy it? If it said, just so you know, I live in a shithole, and I mean that more literally than you may think. And this isn't showing the overcrowdedness of pigs, but this is what they're standing in. This is all their waste that is what I'm saying flows into the Mississippi, and then down into, I mean, they've got nowhere to put it in the middle of the country. Where's it gonna go? Chicken nugget meat, delicious.
Play-Doh.
Here's a cat. I just found out what hot dogs are really made of. Here's the hot dog meat at the bottom. So what's in your hot dog? This is what's been found. Chemicals, bugs, bone, pig snouts, metal, rodent parts, pig anuses, and plastic have all been found in hot dogs.
Oh my god.
Carcasses from older thin cattle and swine, cheeks, jowls, hearts, tongues, lips, eyelids, gums, intestines, ears, nostrils, tails, snouts, tendons, windpipe, liver, kidney, salt, fat, bones, blood, preservatives. Enjoy. Factory farming hurts everyone. And look at what they're doing with these pigs. This is like those pigs, they were outside in that mess, but most of the time really they're in these metal crates, just no room to move. Same thing with the ducks. This is cage-free chickens. If you think you're doing better by getting cage-free, it's no better. They're just all crammed in together in one open space. The calcium conspiracy, the other big lobbyer. Dozens of milk mustache ads tell us that the calcium in milk helps women have stronger bones and avoid osteoporosis. But not according to the 12-year nurses' health study involving 78,000 women, which found no evidence at all that higher intakes of milk reduced osteoporosis or bone fracture incidence. In fact, the study found that the relative risk of hip fracture for women who drink 2 glasses or more of milk per day was actually 1.45 times higher than for those who drank 1 glass or less per week. The calcium losing effect from eating animal protein on the human body is not a matter of controversy in scientific circles. Researchers who conducted a recent survey of diet and hip fractures in 33 countries said they found an absolute phenomenal correlation between the ratio of plant to animal foods and how much calcium was lost. The more plant foods people eat, the stronger their bones and the fewer fractures they experience. The more animal foods people eat, the weaker their bones and the more fractures they experience. In a glass of milk, they're saying each glass of milk has pus cells, cholesterol, fat, growth hormones, plus acidic protein, which is what leaches the calcium from your bones. And that milk causes diabetes, eczema, asthma, and obesity. GMO cows, no steroids here. This is all genetically modified cow beef so that they have more muscle mass and leaner and better beef. If you like liver pate, this is how liver pate is made. They force feed the ducks by holding their throats with this funnel, with this tube of food, just making them eat it, whether they want to eat it or not. Of course, they don't want to eat it. And they can't even breathe a lot of times. They suffocate to death. This makes the liver get engorged and swollen, and then that's what people want. They think it's so whipped up liver pate. This is how they're doing it. Look at these ducks in the corner. They're just terrified every day. Animals do not give their life to us, as the sugar-coated lie would have it. No, we take their lives. They struggle and fight to the last breath, just as we would do if we were in their place. And John Robbins, for decades, he's a wonderful speaker on this subject. He's got a video, Diet for a New America, that's still so relevant today. Factory farmed animals do not see daylight or soil a day in their life. They live opposite how nature intended. They feel so much pain, fear, and terror, and people eat that. When cats play with mice, it's to release the adrenaline so they don't eat that poison in their system. They let it drain out slowly. But when we eat the animals, we kill them right then and there. They're still loaded with all the adrenaline from their fear. In order to keep animals alive in these horrendous, sick conditions, which they are pumped full of antibiotics, which people then eat. So if you're eating meat or animals, you're constantly on antibiotics, unless you're getting organic. And that's what's causing the resistance to antibiotics, which are creating the superbugs today that no antibiotic can touch. So how did they get there? Same thing. This is showing that they feed the antibiotic to the animals. It creates these superbugs. You eat their meat, so now you have the same thing in you. So no one wants to think that there's something wrong with the way they are eating, but I have to ask you, where do you think all that food is coming from that is feeding everyone unlimitedly? You don't see it when you're driving around. We don't see farms and cattle and herds of pigs and sheep and chickens. Yet it's available in every fast food restaurant at any time, unlimited quantities. It's sold cheaply. Like where does everyone think that's coming from? Nobody even thinks about it. They don't even, it's hidden. The films that are showing you all of this are from the employees that work there that have a hidden camera in their jackets or in their pockets, and they're trying to get the message out to show people what's actually going on. Otherwise, it's not in our face. We don't know where, what is actually happening. Albert Einstein said, "Nothing will benefit human health and increase chances for survival on Earth as much as the evolution to a vegetarian diet." And when was Albert Einstein here? When did he die? Does anyone know? 100 years ago? 80 years ago? And he was saying this then. He was saying that then about the bees. Studies show people who are vegan live an average of an extra 15 years over the animal eating population. Most females tend to eat less meat than males, and everyone knows that the male life expectancy is always lower than the female, so this isn't anything new. If you are not yet vegetarian in 2014, or even better, vegan, the question is, why not? There has actually, I heard on the news a couple days ago, been an increase of 300% in vegetarianism. So people are starting to wake up to what is happening. Continuing to eat animals after learning this is the single most important thing to stop doing, and if not, that becomes the behavior of a sociopath. Someone who is walking around numb and continuing to make irresponsible choices. And as harsh a word as that is, the definition of a sociopath is someone who is disconnected from the consequences of his behavior. One who lacks a sense of moral responsibility or social conscience. And I hope by now I've proven to you that there's just nothing good about eating meat. There's no more time to ask nicely, is the point. And it's not even good for you. This guy says, "Stop eating so many vegetables. I can't seem to find anything wrong with you." There was a study done, the China study, where he compared countries that were eating a lot of meat, which is dying from the red is people who died from heart disease and cancer, and the green is how much plant food they were eating. So the less plant food, like Hungary and the United States, the more people were dying from heart disease and cancer. The more plant food people were eating in green over here in Laos and Thailand, the less people were dying from heart disease and cancer. A direct one-to-one correlation. What is the China study? It is the most comprehensive study of nutrition ever conducted on 2,400 Chinese counties, not people, counties, of diet and death rates from cancer. The science points in one direction, that whole plant foods are health promoting while animal foods cause disease regardless of their quality, whether they're organic or not. It found that children who ate the highest protein diets were the most likely to get liver cancer. In fact, dietary protein proved to be so powerful in its effect that we could turn on and turn off cancer growth simply by changing the level consumed. we found that not all proteins had this effect. What protein consistently and strongly promoted the cancer? Casein, which is in cow's milk, was the #1 protein causing cancer. What type of protein did not promote cancer even at high levels of intake? Plant proteins. In fact, the people who ate the most animal-based foods got the most chronic disease. What I didn't write here, though, is the people who ate the plant proteins, even though they had the cancer from the animal proteins, they dramatically showed it reducing the cancer. And they just kept doing this, flip-flopping it back and forth, and it was 100% of the time they could make it move